I'm Debi Goodwin. I wrote a book called A Victory Garden for Trying Times, a memoir about creating my own victory garden 4 years ago. And I want to say that I'm going to create another one this year. I think this spring is the perfect time for a COVID-19 victory garden. We all want to get outside right now, and no place better than in our own backyards where we can help ourselves grow food at a time when we don't want to go to stores, at a time when we fear, whether rightly or wrongly, that the food supply might not be as steady as we like. So what is a victory garden? Well, when I started creating my own victory garden, I'm a writer, a journalist, I set out to find out all I could about victory gardens. I found the first evidence of them in the First World War in Great Britain, where they were called war gardens. The British government realized that they were not going to have enough food to feed their population once the Germans started blockading the island. And they encouraged people to dig up their gardens, their lawns, public spaces to grow vegetables. So they would have some for the summer and some to put away for winter. It didn't work out so well in Great Britain in the First World War. It was hard to convince people. They didn't have a great campaign that first war. It really took off when the Americans picked up the idea under Woodrow Wilson, who before joining in the war realized that Europe would need food after the war if peace was to be maintained. So the Americans set up the Food Administration at that time, and a man named Charles Lathrop Pack was put in charge of getting people out into their gardens. And boy, did that man ever run with it. He created posters and gardens victorious, little boys with hose over their shoulders if they're marching off to war. He called home gardeners soldiers of the soil, and really got the garden movement going in the United States, so that by the end of the First World War, in his book, The War Garden Victorious, he claimed there were 5 million war gardens in the United States. And it's at that point he switched them to the name Victory Gardens. He wanted the War Gardens of 1918 to become the Victory Gardens of 1919. He wanted them to last after the war, but of course they didn't. People didn't need food as much anymore. The sense of insecurity was gone. So Second World War, they came back big time, actually, even in Great Britain, where they had a program called Dig for Victory. And the United States, as soon as they entered the war, started conferences and meetings and campaigns to get people in their garden, ending up with 20 million victory gardens. And about 40% of their vegetables were produced by home gardeners during that time. In Canada, we had victory gardens. In the Second World War, the government actively discouraged home gardeners from going out into the gardens. They wanted to keep all the supplies for the war effort, and they were worried that gardeners would use up those needed supplies. But people wanted to do it, and people got out and made their own gardens. And by 1943, the Canadian government gave in and said, yes, we will have victory gardens. So what does a victory garden consist of? As I said, it's vegetables, but it's vegetables that can be used in the summer, like lettuce, beans, spinach, all those green vegetables that are wonderful to have in the summer, peas. But they also wanted people to grow rutabagas and parsnips and carrots and beets, things that could be stored in the winter, squash, for instance, as well. They wanted those to be in the garden so that there would be a winter supply of vegetables to get the right nutrients through the war years. I found a map when I first started that was for a family of 5 in the United States during the Second World War, and it had rows and rows of different vegetables. Some, like rutabagas, I had no desire to grow, But so I just adjusted it to the foods I knew I wanted to eat or that my family would eat. So I did follow some of the advice I learned from the literature I read about war gardens and victory gardens. Don't grow too many varieties of vegetables. You have to know what the needs of each vegetable. So if it can be overwhelming to have too many different kinds of vegetables going. My advice would be to grow what you love best, that you know you will eat. And another bit of advice I learned was that you should grow in successive planting. So, for instance, sowing lettuce every 2 weeks, replanting your bean seeds every few weeks so that your crop is extended and that you don't waste food because it comes on in more spurts than all at once. I grow a lot of tomatoes because I love my own tomato sauce, which I keep in the freezer. I've still got some from last summer. So paste tomatoes are really important to me, as well as eating tomatoes for summer. So it's that combination of food you can eat in the summer and food that you can enjoy in the winter. I take out my tomato soups and I feel like I'm eating summer. Squash you can either keep in your cold cellar or make soups, put them in the freezer too. So I think this summer, this spring and this summer, we'll see a lot of people in their gardens. Already the seed catalogs are overwhelmed with orders. As soon as seedlings come out, I think the same thing will happen. And I think we'll all enjoy our food that we've grown ourselves this year. One thing I want to say is that it's not just about food. For me, my victory garden that I wrote about was about finding a way to feel hope, finding a way to feel that I was resisting an enemy I could not see, in the case of my husband's illness, cancer. I think this year we feel so out of control of what's going on in the world that we need to feel we can control something. And controlling the food that you bring into your kitchen is a very wonderful way to feel you're nourishing yourself in body and soul. I just wanted to end with a little quote that I quite like. It's from the American poet May Sarton. She's talking about gardens in general in her quote, in her poem, but I think it applies to why I think being out in your vegetable patch this summer, taking care of it, taking pride in the produce you grow will be so important. She wrote, "Everything that slows us down and forces patience, everything that sets us back into the slow circles of nature is a help. Gardening is an instrument of grace." And we all need grace this year.